I would submit very humbly, of course, that some of the discussions, as I said earlier, might be misleading. The key question here is not necessarily the ratios itself, but how are we using or have used the borrowed money. In his presentation, Dr. Kaisar Bengali, he is sitting here for the next session in our second National Debt Conference, if I'm not wrong, made an excellent presentation in which he showed the difference between the project borrowing and the program borrowing. And he made this argument that as long as we are borrowing for the projects, which have at least 1% rate of rate of return on the investment, we are okay. It's fine to borrow for development, but not necessarily sustainable if we borrow too much for programs. I was looking into recent numbers, Government of Pakistan budgetary documents. Happy to see that some of those messages were translated, were listened, and project-based allocation or the use of the loan for projects is almost 3 times more than the program spending. This is also, I think, a good sign. When you talk about signs and indicators, for me, the most important indicator of sustainability of debt, because people are saying, do we have to go back to IMF or can we sustain this level of debt, is actually not the stock, but also the level of debt servicing. How much money do we have to spend every year from our budgetary resources to repay? Because this really, that really is what matters, especially, I guess, in economies like Pakistan, when we are never sure with the informal economy is a huge part, how much is the formal and informal sector. And if you look at the the current budget, actually I see an improvement. In our first, second, and third national debt conferences, we highlighted that the debt servicing ratio has shot up to 45%. So out of the budgetary resources, we were spending up to 45% in debt repayment. Latest budget shows that we will spend about 29% this year, hopefully, if the budget is not revised dramatically. Out of a total expenditure of 4.7 trillion rupees, we will spend about 1.3 trillion rupees in debt servicing, which is, again, remember, 29%, which is considerably less than 45%, which was the time when the government took over. And according to some economists, as long as this ratio is 30%, the economy should be considered sustainable. And this is a good sign in at least in terms of debt servicing, that we have come under that 30%. I think this is happening after many years. At the same time, there is also a risk of revision of budgets, which do happen. So we can't really say for certain right now what will happen in July 2018, but at least the provisioning, the allocation looks encouraging.